Sri Lanka might surely have regrets over its Faustian bargain concerning its harbor. Many African countries rue the day that they let the Communist Party of China build local infrastructure. The Belt and Road Initiative is a policy that seeks to strangle independent nations and bend their resources and sovereignty to Chinese purposes.
I have to interrupt the member now for statements by members. You will have 5 minutes and 50 seconds after oral questions. Statements by members. Déclaration des députés. The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to recognize the incredible work that the Kitchener-Conestoga Youth Council has done in these past few months. Every week, members of the Youth Council meet virtually to discuss their ideas and initiatives to help better our community. They've promoted blood donor drives, led discussions addressing climate change, reached out to and engaged with their peers, and continue to work on new projects. These young leaders always demonstrate creativity and passion to make a difference. Our youth of today are our leaders of tomorrow, and they have already made big changes in our community. I'm proud to represent their voices here in Ottawa, and I look forward to seeing how their hard work helps shape our future. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Independent travel advisors across Canada represent 12,000 small business operators. They have been hit particularly hard by the pandemic. Their incomes have been devastated and in many cases reduced to zero. They work on 100% commission with an average delay of 139 to 317 days before seeing a single dollar from any sale. Without any global travel taking place, independent travel advisors and their families have been left in financial chaos. I was happy to see that WestJet will now offer ticket refunds, but these advisors are now concerned they will be forced to dig into their personal finances to pay commissions they earned nearly a year ago. I call on the Minister of Transport to develop a plan for the aviation sector that protects our hard-working travel advisors. Thank you.
The honourable member for Mount Royal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there are very few in Montreal's English-speaking community who did not know Father John Walsh. His sudden passing last week was devastating news to the many thousands of people whose lives he touched. Father John was a priest for 53 years. He served as a pastor, curate, chaplain, professor, and biblical scholar. He spent decades serving local parishes, including St. Monica's in NDG and St. John Brébeuf in LaSalle, but in his lifetime he did so much more. He co-founded the Procure Walk of Courage to fight prostate cancer. He spent years working to help Montreal's homeless, and his 40-year association with the Nazareth community led to the third Nazareth house being called John's House in his honor. He was a champion of bringing communities together and devoted his life to building bridges between Christians, Jews, Muslims, and First Nations. He was a member of the Order of Canada, a great Canadian, and a true Montrealer. He will be sorely missed.
The honourable member for Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavik, EU. Mr. Speaker, yesterday marked the 135th anniversary of the hanging of Louis Riel, who was executed at the insistence of the federal government for defending the Métis Nation when Ottawa tried to seize its lands. The Bloc moved a motion in this House calling on the government to exonerate Louis Riel as soon as possible, but it refused. Mr. Speaker, this was an opportunity to right an injustice at a time when Canada wants to reconcile with the First Nations. Instead, this House chose to defend its legacy of racist colonialism. It was an opportunity to respect the Quebec National Assembly, which unanimously called on the federal government to exonerate Louis Riel last week. Instead, this House chose to defend the legacy of John A. Macdonald, who declared that Louis Riel will hang, though every dog in Quebec bark in his favour. Clearly, 135 years later, Louis Riel's execution continues to divide nations. The House of Commons has once again chosen the same side, that of the oppressors.
Labrador.
The honourable member for Labrador, I believe you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize the significant contributions of Canada's mineral and mining sector. Labrador is one riding in Canada where mining contributes to sustainable growth, strong employment, and remarkable community partnerships. Minerals and metals are the building blocks of the computers we use every day, the smartphones we rely on, of the vehicles and public transit that get us places, of the buildings where we live, work, and play, and of green technologies that help make the world a more sustainable place. Across the North and right here at home, the industry is leading in innovation and clean technologies, fostering Indigenous partnerships and building cutting-edge infrastructure to support their operations and the communities they work in. So as we look to address the challenges of COVID-19 and to build back better, our government will continue to work with the Mining Association of Canada, with PDAC and industry leaders across the country to enhance these practices and ensure the competitiveness of Canada's mining sector in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Prince George Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as December 25th and Christmas quickly approach, I'm reminded about the true meaning of Christmas. God sending his only son, Jesus, to save the world. Perhaps now more than ever, we all need to be reminded of the joy of the very first Christmas. Then the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign unto you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men." From my family and staff to all of you, may you remember the true joy and everlasting meaning of the season. Merry Christmas.
The honourable member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, I would like to underscore the importance of the announcement made by our government with respect to the Universal Broadband Fund. The enhancement of this fund will have a major impact on the quality of life of many Canadians and of thousands of people in my riding of Châteauguay-Lacolle. The big lockdown underscored the importance of high-speed internet to the vitality of our communities. With no internet connection, working from home and studying from home and making online appointments are difficult. Even promoting companies becomes impossible. I would like to underscore the excellent work of the mayors in my riding who have brought forth this issue and who are showing creativity. These are people who want everyone to be connected. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, Diwali, also called the Festival of Lights, represents the triumph of good over evil. And at this occasion, small ceramic lamps are filled and called diyas. And the observation of Diwali in India differs from one region to another in the traditions. And it represents the sixth Guru, Sikh Guru Hargobind, who left prison and was sent to Amritsar. It is a day that reminds Sikhs all the efforts that were necessary to keep fighting for freedom and human rights and to fight against tyranny and oppression. In other words, to bring light to the lives of others. During these complicated times, may light shine into the lives of each and every one of us, and may it never stop shining. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Mr. Speaker, I, like many of the other MPs just elected over a year ago, have likely been getting lots of questions about how my first year in Parliament's been. I reply pretty much as expected, while highlighting it's an absolute honour and privilege to serve the constituents of Bruce Grey, Owen Sound, and that I view myself as one of the more nonpartisan MPs here in the House. Unfortunately, I do state I find myself becoming more partisan every day. The main reason is the lack of transparency and openness in this government. My first question in the House last December on behalf of Canadian beef farmers was why did the government not apply for BSE negligible risk status in July of 2019 to the World Animal Health Organization? I didn't get a reply. So I asked for a written response this past winter. Again, a non-response. So I tried again this fall. The answer this time? Canada applied in July of 2020. This government likes to preach about building back better. Mr. Speaker, how about just do better? Canadians expect answers. Just answer the questions.
The honourable member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On December 1st, we will mark Giving Tuesday, the 8th year it will be celebrated in Canada. Giving Tuesday is a global movement for giving and volunteering, taking place each year after Black Friday and Cyber Monday. It's a day when charities, companies, community leaders, and residents join together to support their favorite cause by fundraising, donating, volunteering, and spreading the word. We have seen inspiring Canadians across our country come together to support those in need throughout this pandemic. Across Canada, there are 43 movements celebrating Giving Tuesday, including in my hometown of Mississauga, where a group of volunteers lead Mississauga Gives, a campaign harnessing generosity to bring about positive change. Whether you choose to make a financial contribution to a cause important to you, donate a gently used item or your time, donate blood, or choose another way to give, I encourage everyone to join millions of Canadians this Giving Tuesday as we unite to make a difference.
The honourable member for Caribou Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, I'm so proud to rise in this House today to recognize two young constituents who showed incredible courage and bravery in the face of terrifying circumstances. Last month, Finn and Oliver Goddard were traveling with their family within my riding when the family's truck hit black ice, rolled over, landed on the passenger side, and pinned all the occupants. 11-year-old Finn sprang into action, unbuckled Oliver, and helped him get out. Under Finn's leadership, together they were able to rescue the rest of the family from the vehicle. Finn was composed and calm, but decisive. He knew what he needed to do, and he just did it. To Finn and Oliver, when others might have froze, you took action, and in doing so, you saved lives. You have proven yourself to be steadfast in the face of a daunting challenge. You have demonstrated to yourselves and to your community that you can do anything. Mr. Speaker, I'm so proud of these young men, and I know they have a bright future ahead of them. I hope all colleagues in this place will join me in saying thank you.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Natasha is a single mom in my riding who works as a server at a local Italian restaurant. When I talked to her last week, even though I could tell she is tough as nails, her worry about being out of work because of future COVID lockdowns weighed heavy on her. Natasha wants to work, but in my province, which was already hit hard by the Prime Minister's devastating policies against workers in the energy sector, it's become nearly impossible. The Prime Minister has no understanding that Natasha and most people in Calgary can't afford to take 2 weeks at home to wait for test results if their kids get a runny nose, and he failed to get rapid tests for Canadians, which could have helped to prevent the second wave. The Prime Minister has failed to take care of Canadians, COVID or not. He consistently put Canadian interests behind his own or those of the cocktail set at the United Nations. He makes choices that continue to devastate the ability of Canadians to work or to be healthy. We must fight back when he says he wants to expand this devastating so-called reset of our nation. Mr. Speaker, women like Natasha do need a reset, a new Prime Minister.
The honourable member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, a new report just came out naming Saudi Arabia and Canada as the worst performers when it comes to fossil fuel subsidies. Take a moment to let that sink in. We are topping the list with Saudi Arabia as the worst in the world. Canada promised to stop giving out fossil fuel subsidies, but like so many other empty promises, this government is actually increasing the amount of public money being handed out to big oil and gas companies. And let's not forget they bought a pipeline. Why are we not investing that money in creating good, sustainable, low-carbon jobs? Canadians are calling for a just and sustainable recovery. They want investments in clean energy, green infrastructure, energy-efficient housing, and public transit. But instead, this government is doubling down on the fossil fuel industry. This Prime Minister claims to be a climate leader, but Canada is on par with Saudi Arabia, named as the worst when it comes to handing out public money to big oil and gas. It's time to put some action behind the empty promises and end fossil fuel subsidies now.
Hear, hear.
L'honorable. The honourable member for Beauport, Côte de Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, for months now, the Bloc has been asking the government to create a special status for the unique cultural industry. We're starting to see the lights go out and curtains close, one after the other, for this industry. And it's with great sadness we learned that the Cabaret de Pierrot is closing in December. The De Pierrot is a cool place that has seen hundreds of artists become famous because they have been on that stage. Culture is now in danger, and we want to save the Dieu Pierrot, but to save culture, we need a specific and permanent plan. To all the managers and artists of Les Deux Pierrots, bravo, thank you, and farewell.
Member for Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister for Women and Gender Equality publicly guessed how much income she made per year. Not only was she wrong to the tune of almost $20,000. If you're a CERB recipient, that's 10 months. If you're a person in the minister's riding, that's 7 months of pay at the average income level. But it's particularly maddening coming from this minister because female entrepreneurs have seen their businesses decimated by COVID-19. Workers in the hospitality and tourism sectors are overwhelmingly women. They're among the hardest hit by the pandemic. They'd love to have additional $20,000, and I bet you that most of them could tell you down to the last red cent how much they made on their last paycheck. This minister can't represent Canadian women in a COVID economy if she can forget about more money than most of them will make.
The honourable member for Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, there's a picture that hangs in my Ottawa office. It's of a friend, a man called Dry. Dry short for Rainer Karl August Dry Mayer. I first met Dry in the mid-90s. He lived in a tent along Lake Ontario in Toronto. When I met Dry, he had turned his back on the world, found himself a quiet place to look at the stars, have a little drink, and write some cosmic poetry by a fire. Eventually, other homeless people, new tents, then activists, then politicians would gather around the fire that he started, and Tent City was born, and Dry was its mayor. Tent City was eventually cleared. The residents were given housing, but Dry was Dry. He chose to pitch a tent and sleep in that tent because he said it just felt right. Dry was one of a kind, and he passed away this week. He was a reluctant activist, but not only did he remain housed for the rest of his life, he also never stopped fighting to make sure other people got housed as well. We lost a good soul this week, but his fight is our fight, and that fight continues to end homelessness in Canada. Rest in peace, mate. Rest in peace.
Question orale, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to China, this government is out of step with our allies. Last week, the U.S. Treasury Department imposed sanctions on 4 more officials involved in the draconian security laws in Hong Kong. That makes 15 in total. The number of officials sanctioned by the Canadian government? 0, Mr. Speaker. Why is this government always hanging back when it comes to getting serious with China?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has a complex, multidimensional relationship with China that looks at challenges and engages with China with eyes wide open. Many international partners are also facing similar challenges and are actively engaging with them in order to evaluate best approaches together. We've been clear about the principles and commitment to the rule of law, our deep concern for our citizens who have been detained, and our farmers and producers. We remain firm in defending our principles and interests and always will.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to threats against Canadian citizens, our eyes have been wide open for years. Chinese Canadians have been subjected to intimidation, not just in Hong Kong, but here in Canada as well. At committee, immigration officials admitted they do not track nor do they try to stop Chinese agents posing as students, as tourists, or workers. Why is the Prime Minister failing to protect Canadians that speak out against the Chinese Communist regime?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has among the best security agencies in the world, and the folks who work for our security agencies work every single day to keep Canadians safe. Not all of it appears in the newspapers. On the contrary, a lot of the work that is done in important situations is never heard of at all. But we will continue to ensure we're supporting our security agencies, supporting Canadians who speak up, and protecting all Canadians from foreign interference or influence, because we know that to be free in Canada is the best thing in the world.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, our security agencies know that Huawei cannot be in our 5G network, so I hope the Prime Minister votes with us on our motion. When Australia realized they had a problem with infiltration by Chinese agents, they did something about it. They stopped infiltration on campuses, in business, in academia. This Prime Minister waves his finger and says interference is inappropriate. Chinese agents threatening Canadians on our soil, and all this Prime Minister has to say is it's inappropriate. Will the Prime Minister show Canadians that he has a plan to keep them safe from Chinese operations in Canada?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our security agencies have worked with a range of Canadian institutions and universities to make sure that they are safe. Canadian universities, of course, work with a range of industry partners on research projects. So we created a working group with universities and those national security agencies to help Canadians safeguard their work and identify potential risks. We will always protect data and intellectual property, advance science, and ensure that international research partnerships are always beneficial to Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Les États-Unis.
The United States, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand have all said no to Huawei as part of their 5G. They put the interests of their fellow citizens ahead of the Chinese state. But the Liberal government continues to admire China and is ignoring the safety and security of Canadians. When will the Prime Minister say no to Huawei in our 5G network? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. 5G technology can respond to an increase in users and provide higher capacity and faster service. We will ensure that Canadians benefit from the best 5G technology and will always be there to protect the security and interests of Canadians. That's why we're working with our security agencies that will make recommendations on the best way to ensure competitiveness and protection for Canadians and our companies. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal member for Saint-Laurent talks about the decline of French in Montreal as a myth. But the real myth, Mr. Speaker, is that the Liberal government claims to protect French in Quebec. Since 2015, we've been waiting for a modernization of the Official Languages Act. No action and lots of delays. Does the Prime Minister agree with his Member of Parliament? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The member for Saint-Laurent apologized for her insensitive remarks, and as a Montrealer, I am concerned about the decline we are seeing in French. The government will always be there to protect French across the country, be it in official language minority communities or in Quebec. We acknowledged in the throne speech that French has a specific status in North America, and we are going to work in Quebec and across the country to protect French. We are here to protect francophones across the country. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Prime Minister. Our rights stop where injury to others occur. Those are the words of the Minister of Canadian Heritage. Now, based on what the Minister of Canadian Heritage said, he's responsible for the CRTC, Radio-Canada, and Culture, that I would lose my right that anyone would lose their rights, that we all lose our freedom of expression as soon as someone decides to state that they are injured or offended by what is being said. Can the Prime Minister confirm that? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. No, Mr. Speaker. We will always defend the freedom of expression and our creators and artists, their right to challenge our authorities, to challenge each other. We need our creators to make us laugh, to make us think about a better world, a different world. Our creators are the essence of our identity. We will always support them and defend their freedom of expression. The Honourable Member for Belley-Chambly. Look, talking about creators, who's in charge of censorship at Radio-Canada? Because of a comment, not a complaint, not a letter to the Ombudsman, a simple comment, an episode of La Petite Vie was censored by Radio-Canada, and it was replaced by a warning in the event that someone would have might have confused La Petite Vie with a BBC documentary. Can the Prime Minister tell us if Guylaine Tremblay, Marc Labrèche, or Claude Meunier criticizing a black, playing a black, needs to be censored at Radio-Canada? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will always defend the right and freedom of expression, the ability to fully express oneself in this country. Decisions made by Radio-Canada are independent of of the government. We expect everyone to defend fundamental rights. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Liberals, the Conservatives and the Bloc voted against our motion to tax the ultra-rich and excessive profits being made by large corporations. Families are having trouble making ends meet, and the ultra-rich people have recorded record profits. Why does the Prime Minister always defend the ultra-rich? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, when we were elected in 2015, the first thing we did was to increase taxes on the rich and reduce them for the middle class. Unfortunately, the NDP voted against that initiative. Each step along the way, we were there to help the middle class, to help lift Canadians out of poverty. And during the pandemic, we are here to help Canadians, workers and small business. We are going to ensure that we are always there to help Canadians to make it through this crisis, to create a better world, because they are prosperous. We will be there for Canadians each step along the way.
Well, let's talk about what happened yesterday. Yesterday, the Liberals, the Conservatives and the Bloc voted against our motion to tax the ultra-wealthy and to tax the excess profits of large corporations. Let's talk about what excess profits look like. Westons, who own large grocery stores across Canada, have received massive profits during this pandemic, and what they're doing is increasing dividend payouts to their shareholders while they are cutting the pay of frontline workers. So why does this Prime Minister stand with the Westons instead of frontline workers?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, the very first thing this government did in 2015 when we got elected was we raised taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could lower them for the middle class. And what did the NDP do, Mr. Speaker? They voted against it. Every step of the way, we have been there to support the middle class, to support people working hard to join it, and to make sure Canadians got ahead. Whether it was 1 million jobs created over the past 5 years, whether it was 1 million people lifted out of poverty, Mr. Speaker, at the same time, we will continue to fight for Canadians and for their success.
The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Monsieur le Président, le gouvernement...
Mr. Speaker, the government has finally acknowledged that its policy isn't working, and that's why it's going to be introducing a new policy framework for China. China has put in place subversive operations here in Canada. It's targeting Canadians and jeopardizing the rights and freedoms of Canadians. When will the government put forth a real plan to stop China's operations here in Canada. The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. I thank my honourable colleague for his question. Mr. Speaker, on the motion put forth by the Conservative Party today, we were prepared to move amendments, constructive amendments, to advance the situation. In terms of foreign policy and national security, what we want is to work with opposition members with respect to the new framework we're putting forth. This is a normal development since 2020. China of 2020 is not the same as it was many years ago. We are developing plans to respond to this new reality. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills. Mr. Speaker, I hope that the government will be voting in favour of our motion tomorrow.
The government said it would make a decision on Huawei before the election. Then in July it said it would make a decision on Huawei after the election. It's now been more than a year since the election and still no decision. The government also says that it believes in multilateralism, but 4 of the 5 eyes have already made a decision to restrict Huawei from their networks. Canada is unilaterally alone in not making a decision. When will the government join with our allies and make a decision on Huawei's participation in Canada's 5G network?
Join with us. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our government is going to continue to ensure that Canadian networks are kept safe and secure, and we've been consistent on this point for many months now. While we won't comment on any specific companies, an examination of 5G technologies and a review of security and economic considerations is ongoing. We're going to weigh these matters with allies and partners, with our security experts, and we're going to make the best decision for Canadians, not on the basis of politics.
Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, the Public Safety Minister says he doesn't, quote, tolerate hostile foreign actors threatening Canadians, but China's Operation Fox Hunt continues without real action to charge and arrest state-sponsored bullies terrorizing Canadians. This morning, the Foreign Minister said the Public Safety Minister will bring forward measures to protect the safety and security of Canadians. So to the Minister, and for all those being harassed and bullied by China's communist regime, what exactly are those actions, and when will they be implemented?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and let me also be very clear that we know that the activities of hostile state actors are prevalent in this country. They use their intelligence and security services to threaten and intimidate individuals outside their country, and when individuals in Canada are subjected to harassment, manipulation, or intimidation by foreign states, these activities constitute a threat to Canada's sovereignty and to the safety of all Canadians. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I want to assure them that our security agencies and law enforcement agencies are actively taking steps to protect them, their personal information, and their interests, both domestic and foreign, from the threat of foreign interference and espionage.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Well, he recognizes this reality, but on China, these Liberals are clearly falling behind our allies, and they are failing to protect the safety and security of Canadians. In 1 year, Operation Fox Hunt coerced 680 people around the world with stark options: return to China or commit suicide. And families in China are threatened or arrested to force compliance. Canada's National Security Committee report said that part of this operation is even carried out here at home in our CMP offices. The U.S. has already made arrests. So how far does this go? How many Canadians will be harmed before this government, this minister, actually does something?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And again, I would reiterate that we are taking a whole-of-government approach, protecting the interests of Canadians and security of Canadians. Our security and intelligence community, including CSIS and the RCMP, are actively investigating threats of foreign interference and espionage, and where the evidence exists, we'll take action. But in addition to that, Mr. Speaker, we've undertaken a significant outreach campaign to sensitize Canadians, Canadian companies, and other stakeholders involved in this activity or subject to this activity. Mr. Speaker, we will take the steps necessary to keep Canadian interests safe.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, the Communist Party of China is working tirelessly to expand its sphere of influence economically, militarily, and diplomatically. The extent of its sphere of influence has never been clearer than recently, as we face a global pandemic originating in China. The World Health Organization is under Chinese influence. Designated scientists are struggling to investigate the origins of the virus in China. Why does the government have blind faith in a compromised organization? The The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it's concerning to hear the member opposite talk about the World Health Organization under the influence of China. Listen, we know that the World Health Organization, like every organization, will have to conduct a review about how they've managed the global pandemic, but we also know that the institution plays a critical role in beating back not just COVID-19, Mr. Speaker, but diseases like Ebola, diseases like HIV/AIDS, diseases like the measles. Mr. Speaker, we need global action on disease. It's what protects us all. Thank you.
Honorable député de Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Chinese forces are at work in Canada and they're threatening Canadian interests. By blindly relying on a compromised organization, the government has put the lives of Canadians at risk. It hasn't listened to Canadian experts. It cut funding to the Global Public Health Intelligence Network. It's questioned the asymptomatic transmission of COVID-19. Who is the government accountable to? Canadians or to the Chinese regime?
Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, every step of the way we've relied on public health experts and officials, people that have epidemiological advice and virologists to guide our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, we've worked with international partners. We've done the work that is needed to protect Canadians, and we're going to continue that work, Mr. Speaker. This is a global incident of public health crisis, and we have to rely on science as the way out. Mr. Speaker, it is concerning to hear the member opposite not understand that science is the way out of this crisis, and in fact, we will work strongly with all, Mr. Speaker, we'll work strongly with all partners to ensure that we support provinces and territories and Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Another title for the Prime Minister. Canada is investing more than $100 billion in a policy for naval construction. 2/3 are going to Irving and Halifax, and 1/3 to Seaspan in BC. Less than $3% to Davie in Quebec City, which is one of the largest and most reliable shipyards in the country, with 50% of the naval capacity in this country. Today, we've learned that by buying the Obelix and the Asterix from Davie, Canada would have saved between $2 and $3 billion for the resupply ships. Mr. Speaker, what's the Liberals' problem with Davie and to the Quebec City region? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. There are no problems, Mr. Speaker, between the government and Davie. We initiated negotiations to include the Davie shipyard as an authorized shipyard under the National Shipyard Construction Strategy. $2.1 billion has gone to Davie so far. Other contracts are under negotiation, and Davie is a very important partner for the Government of Canada, Mr. Speaker. We are proud to work with the Davie shipyard and with the workers of the Davie shipyard. The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Mr. Speaker, the government had the choice: award Davie $1.4 billion in contracts or award over $4 billion under the shipbuilding strategy. The difference is $2.6 billion. That's how much the government is willing to spend to avoid giving Davie a contract. The price of not doing business in Quebec. That's $150 that each Quebec taxpayer throws out the window to keep the best shipyard in North America idle. Those are Quebec taxpayer dollars. When will the government finally give Davie its fair share of contracts? 20%, not less than 3%. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, once again, I would point out that we are very happy to work with Davie and very happy with the Asterix and with the work it's doing. And the Parliamentary Budget Officer has stated we're comparing apples to oranges between the Asterix and the resupply ship. The resupply ships are underway in Vancouver, and there are other promising contracts available for Davie.
Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, days after Meng Wanzhou, executive of the Chinese giant Huawei, was arrested in 2018, 2 Canadians were arrested by the Chinese government in an act of retaliation. Yet this government is still toying with the idea to allow China to plant the seeds of digital control in our country and freely collect Canadians' data and personal information. Will the government commit today to ban 5G Huawei?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we're well aware that emerging fifth-generation technologies are a global phenomenon, and we're going to ensure that Canadians benefit from the latest and most beneficial 5G innovations. But we're going to do this in a way that accounts for all security, economic, and scientific considerations. We're going to listen to our experts, and we'll make a decision in due course. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this government has underestimated the scale and ambition of China and its Trojan horse opportunism for too long. China's counter-espionage law says that in any case the CCP deems relevant organizations and individuals must provide espionage evidence truthfully and may not refuse. Even if Huawei says it won't hand data to the Chinese government, it wouldn't have a choice. Does the minister recognize the security risk in allowing Huawei to operate 5G in Canada?
For Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm sure the member opposite understands that I am not going to discuss ongoing security or criminal investigative activities undertaken by our very able security and law enforcement agencies. However, I want to assure him, and I would point to him, for example, to the work of the NCI COP committee that released a report earlier this year, making it very clear that China is a key and growing risk in this regard. And as has already been stated, the government is eyes wide open. We work very closely with all of our Five Eyes partners. We are well aware of all of the risks inherent to this, and we are prepared to take the action necessary at the appropriate time.
L'Honorable Député de Chambord.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, recently the Canadian International Trade Tribunal was considering a contract between the government and NewTek for X-ray scanners in Canadian embassies around the world. Last night at committee, we learned that the contract had been cancelled with this company, which is owned by the Chinese government. I find it unfortunate that the contract was cancelled only after Canadians brought pressure to bear that would have represented threats to the security of Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for this opportunity to clarify the situation. The contract was not approved, and we stated very clearly there was a tender call, and at that point, Mr. Speaker, we said that national security took precedence and none of those products were purchased. And once we became aware of the situation, we redid the tender call. National security is always a criteria, especially when it comes to security equipment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to see that the government is starting to understand that we can't have confidence in the Chinese regime. We saw another contract with CanSino for vaccinations. Now, with MasTec, the government has understood that we can't have confidence in them. So my question is simple. Can the Minister of Public Procurement Canada will ensure that no further contracts are signed with the Chinese regime? The Honourable Minister, I'd like to thank the member for his question. I think that I was clear, and I think that parliamentarians in this House understand that national security takes precedence in contracts. We have stated that repeatedly today. National security is always a first criteria. That's the government's responsibility to keep Canadians safe.
Enter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Manitoba, the provincial and federal government have had 8 months to fix health and safety issues occurring in federally owned long-term care homes. They failed. We now have outbreaks of COVID-19 at Maples and Parkview Place long-term care homes. Workers and residents are getting sick and losing their lives. The federal government owns Revera facilities, and it's time they stop playing jurisdictional games and honor their responsibility to keep residents and workers safe and alive. When will the Liberals own their part of the crisis and make sure workers and loved ones can survive the pandemic?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Speaker, I think every member in this House is concerned with the growth of cases and indeed the tragic deaths that are occurring across the country as a result of COVID-19. And our hearts are with all of the families that have lost a loved one. And in this difficult time, we all have to continue to pull together. We need a Team Canada approach, Mr. Speaker, and that's exactly what we've been providing, whether it's $19 billion to provinces and territories, whether it's millions of rapid tests to provinces and territories, whether it's additional supports, as in over 250 Canadian Red Cross people deployed into long-term care homes, Mr. Speaker, including in Manitoba, will continue to be there, Mr. Speaker, for all Canadians, no matter which province they're in.
The honourable member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, the government promised supports to small businesses, and this House passed legislation on November 6th. But businesses are still waiting, and they're incurring massive debt while they wait. Ultimately, the Liberals shouldn't have delayed. This should have been passed in the summer, but they prorogued Parliament, even though everyone knew a second wave was coming. Time is running out for so many small businesses that are closed again to protect public health. This government needs to move quickly. Why are the Liberals not asking the Senate to convene and pass these supports? Where is the sense of urgency to save Canadian small businesses?
Honourable Minister for Small Businesses.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for that important question. That urgency is what we have been dealing with right from day one, making sure that we have supports to help them pay for staff, to pay for fixed costs, and to get that liquidity support in the small business loans. We have taken this with absolute urgency from day one. We will continue to do that every single day so we can bridge them beyond this crisis. And I want to thank small businesses for all the work that they're doing for our country. Thank you.
The honourable member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, the opioid crisis continues to be one of the most serious public health crises in Canada's history. Tragically, the impact of COVID-19 is only worsening this crisis, and many communities like my riding of Davenport are feeling the effects. Canadians can't wait. Leadership on this issue will save hundreds of lives. Can the Minister of Health share some of the work the federal government is doing to address the devastating impacts of the opioid crisis?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for her passionate advocacy for people who use substances. Every person who uses the substances deserves the right to treatment, deserves the right to compassionate care. And as we fight COVID-19, we can't forget about the epidemic of opiate overdose that is happening here in our country, and that's why we announced nearly $9.5 million for 4 safer supply projects in Ontario, including 2 in Toronto, Mr. Speaker. That is a way to ensure that people have access to safer substances, less toxic drugs. In fact, we'll continue to tackle this epidemic by expanding access to a safe supply of prescription opioids, committing over $700 million, Mr. Speaker, towards effective treatment and fighting stigma that prevents people from reaching them.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, the Foreign Affairs Minister has repeatedly said that he is disturbed by the treatment of Uyghurs, but his feelings haven't led to any action. In fact, the government remains complicit in the abuse of Uyghurs by failing to put in place safeguards to address the sourcing of products made by Uyghur slave labor and by funding the Belt and Road Initiative through the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. So when will the government use Magnitsky sanctions to hold perpetrators accountable, protect the integrity of our supply chains, and withdraw Canadian taxpayers' dollars from the AIIB?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member is correct. We are gravely concerned on this side of the House, and I think all parliamentarians when it comes to the plight of the Uyghur. Mr. Speaker, I raised this issue both publicly and privately with the Chinese authority. We welcome the work of the committee. And more than that, Mr. Speaker, I did speak to the UN High Representative for Human Rights to look with her what the international community can do in terms of actions to assess the situation and report back to the international community. Mr. Speaker, we're going to work with the international community to hold China to account to its international obligations.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, he didn't need to wait for feedback from the UN. Canadian parliamentarians have been suggesting real action that this minister could be taking for a very long time. Now, last year, Conservatives asked the government about CPP investments in Chinese military-affiliated tech companies playing a significant role in the surveillance and mass detention of Uyghurs. All we heard back at the time was that they were looking out for the interests of Canadian pensioners. Has the government done anything to prevent CPP funds from enabling grievous human rights abuses?
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm really surprised to hear the member speak when he said that we should not work with the UN when it comes to investigating a serious situation. Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised. What we said, Mr. Speaker, is that we have taken action. The member for whom I have the utmost respect always says take action. Mr. Speaker, we took action. We're talking to the United Nations High Representative for Human Rights, talking to her to say what is the international community is going to do and lending Canada support. I think Canadians who are watching, Mr. Speaker, expect Canada to work with the international community to hold China to account in terms of its international obligations. Honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, we're 10 months into the COVID crisis and news of potential vaccines are starting to surface. But for months, immunologists, pharmacists, and public health officials have been asking the federal government to table a transparent plan on where Canada is on the list to receive a vaccine, how the vaccine will be delivered to Canadians, and who will get it first. On what date will the Prime Minister make public this plan, or does he even have one?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as scientists have been working around the world on their important work to uncover effective vaccines for COVID-19, we've been working to make sure that Canadians will have access and be able to get vaccinated when the time comes. That's why we've secured a range of vaccines, Mr. Speaker, and hundreds of millions of doses for Canadians so that Canadians are safe and well served when they arrive. A few vaccine candidates have published some promising results and seem to be moving quickly. This is the light at the end of the tunnel. I know that we need to continue to work closely together to get through the next several months, but we will continue to work with all of our partners to ensure that Canadians have access to vaccines when they arrive.
Honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
So, Mr. Speaker, for those watching, that's word salad for we don't have a plan and we don't have details. And today we learned that the military might actually have to be deployed regarding the vaccine. But we still don't have details on who's going to get it in what order, how it's going to be distributed, and how some of the logistic details might be addressed. The health minister didn't deliver rapid tests in a way that could have stopped the second wave. Is her incompetence or the Prime Minister's the reason why, 10 months into COVID, we don't have any details on vaccine distribution?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And this is a whole-of-government approach. In fact, it's a Team Canada approach. We'll be working closely with provinces, territories, indeed local public health as we need to. This is an endeavour that will require all hands on deck. And, Mr. Speaker, I'm so thrilled with the work of people like the Vaccine Task Force, hard-working volunteer Canadians who have been helping the Government of Canada to procure the most effective vaccines. In fact, we can see that that is resulting in ensuring that Canadians have access to promising vaccines, to the number of doses that we'll need. We'll continue that hard work, Mr. Speaker, and I know that Canadians are looking forward to the light at the end of the tunnel.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, for a long time now, the Bloc Québécois has been decrying the Anglicization of Quebec, supported by the federal government through its promotion of services in English. Today, 200 people reported businesses in Montreal where they couldn't get served in French. The minister confirmed to me yesterday, not just once but twice, that she acknowledged French was in decline and that she was going to do something about it. Can she announce any concrete step, anything she will do to address the immediate concerns of Quebecers? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, we have to be there to protect Francophones' language rights, be it in Quebec or elsewhere in Canada. The government has acknowledged that more needs to be done to protect the French language. We know it's a minority language across Canada and even in the world. I'm happy to work with my colleague when we announce an important reform to the Official Languages Act to recognize the situation and that the federal government can set an example and can do more to protect access to the French language. The Honourable Member for La Pointe de l'Île. Mr. Speaker, it's not hard to get. There's one official language in Quebec, French. One language under threat in Quebec, French. And one language Ottawa supports in Quebec, English. In its throne speech, the government undertook to protect and promote French in Canada, but the Official Languages Act is really all about encouraging institutional bilingualism and service in English. That's why the feds have butchered Bill 101 since 1977. When is this government going to stop undermining French in Quebec? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I strongly disagree with my colleague because the fact is we are supporting Francophones in Quebec and the government of Quebec. There are French services in immigration under the bilateral agreement around immigration. We're also there to support artists and cultural artists in supporting Radio-Canada and other institutions. We are also there to support culture and the French Fact through telefilm and all kinds of cultural institutions. So we are an ally to Francophones. The honourable member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, last week, the member for Saint Laurent said she needed proof that French was declining in Quebec and Canada. In my opinion, she must not be reading any studies or listening to any news to make that kind of claim. I don't think she goes to very many parts of Montreal. She's way out of touch. But not a single Liberal member, and particularly none from Quebec, stood up to condemn her disrespectful remarks, disrespectful of all Francophones in Quebec and outside Quebec. Does the Prime Minister or the Minister of Official Languages have the courage to stand up and condemn those remarks? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, I'd invite my colleague to deal with his own members. Both official language should be strenuously defended in Canada. And I'd like to see them stand up and do more to defend both official languages because it's fundamental. French needs to be present in Quebec and outside Quebec. Now, member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, these are the facts. They've been in power for 5 years. Text messages from COVID Alert app in English only, $1 billion contract for We Charity, a unilingual English organization, conference calls in English only, labeling authorized in English only, and a refusal to respond clearly to Quebec on the enforcement of Bill 101 in federally regulated workplaces. And they have no business lecturing us. It's time they tabled legislation to modernize official languages as called for by all the organizations. That's all we're waiting for. The Honourable Minister. You know, the Liberal of government has no lessons to take from the Conservatives. The fact is, just look at the damage they did. There were massive cuts to all services in French. And the stakeholders, Francophones, particularly outside Quebec, were crying famine after 10 years of the Harper government. So we've turned things around. We've supported the French language. We've also provided support for CBC and Radio-Canada because there were cutbacks to that strong institution as well. And we've restored the Court Challenges program. The honourable member for Richmond Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, the minister is just talking, but there's no action. The consultations have been done. The reports have been tabled. The Senate and the Commissioner of Official Languages have made their recommendations, and the government of Quebec is waiting. The Liberals have been in power for 5 years, and there's less than 4 weeks left before the holidays. If the Prime Minister and his Minister of Official Languages are anything more than all talk, no action, what are they waiting for? Why haven't they tabled legislation here in the House? They should table that legislation now. The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Clearly, my colleague needs his memory jogged. We appointed bilingual judges to the Supreme Court. We did it, but Harper refused. We have recognized those who have vested rights. We are there to protect language rights through the Court Challenges program. Those are all clear and concrete steps that we had to take because of the failure of the Conservative government to protect official languages. We are there beside Francophone and other language minorities, and we will also overhaul the legislation.
The honourable member for Humber River, Black Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the gun violence in our big cities is getting out of control. Last weekend in my riding of Humber River, Black Creek, an innocent 12-year-old boy named Dante was killed as he was shopping with his mother. As we mourn the loss and honor the memory of this brave young life, we must resolve to end gun violence once and for all. Could the Minister of Public Safety please report to this House what this government has done, what the government is committed to do to keep guns off our street and end the gun violence in Canada?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Humber River, Black Creek, and share in her condolences to the family and friends of Dante Andreatta for this tragic and senseless crime. Mr. Speaker, we have taken very significant steps. We've invested nearly $327 million to assist law enforcement right across this country, but to the tune of $65 million in Ontario to deal with gun violence and the activities of gangs. But we know, Mr. Speaker, that there is so much more that we must do, and the tragic death of Dante Andreatta must deepen the resolve of every member of this House to reduce gun violence. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, we'll strengthen gun control and we'll make investments of $250 million as promised to build up resilience of communities and invest in our
The honourable member for Yorkton Melville.
Speaker, the backlog of 50,000 veterans applications is impacting our veterans' mental health. Sanctuary trauma is deeply rooted in a veteran's sense of this government's lack of sacred obligation. December 2018, Shane Jones wrote to the Prime Minister himself documenting ways that he was being treated unfairly by VAC since being medically released in 2008. Yes, his concerns are with current and past governments. The Minister of Veterans Affairs replied personally in June of 2020 to Shane and ordered a departmental review of his file 4.5 months ago. When will his review be complete?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the backlog is totally unacceptable to this government. And that's why, in fact, we invested just under $200 million to make sure we're able to hire 350 new employees to train them to deal with the backlog. Along with that, Mr. Speaker, we have over 160 other employees who are in training to make sure they deal with the backlog. Along with that, we're digitizing the files and making sure that the people who approve the files are coordinated in appropriate fashion. We have and will address the backlog, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, Roger Foley was born with a severe neurodegenerative disease. He gave moving testimony last week on Bill C-7 at committee. Roger helped take care of his father, who was suffering with cancer, until his own disabilities got worse. Now the healthcare system has failed him. They denied him the supports that provide him the dignity of living at home. Roger would like to know, does the Liberal government think it should be easier for him to end his life than access the supports to affirm and enhance his life?
Full Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we know that people with disabilities deserve all of the supports to live their full potential with the full dignity, no matter where they live in this country. And that's why we've worked so closely with the disability community and with our stakeholders at the provincial and territorial levels to make sure that they have the capacity to provide that support. Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue that hard work. Everyone, including people like Roger, have the right to live with full dignity in the choice, in the manner that they choose. Thank you.
Before going to the next question, I want to remind the honourable members and ministers, when you ask your question and after you answer your question, please mute your microphones. It's not unlike us to actually start talking and forget that it's on. It'll just make it much easier for the person who's asking the question or answering the question. The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, support for people with disabilities is inadequate. There's a problem when medically assisted death is easier to access than disability support. Krista Carr of Inclusion Canada, an organization that works with people with disabilities, called Bill C-7 our worst nightmare. Dr. Gallagher from U of T is concerned Bill C-7 will single out our elderly and it could lead to preventable deaths. Why won't the Minister of Justice listen to these concerns and accept our reasonable amendments to protect the most vulnerable in Canadian society?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the bill that's being studied, C7, in front of the committee, heard very compelling testimony from a series of stakeholders, including persons with disability. All of those submissions are being carefully considered by the committee, and were also carefully considered by the Ministers of Health, persons with disabilities, and the Minister of Justice during the consultations that took place in January. This bill is an important one. It balances the need to protect those who are vulnerable with ensuring the autonomy of Canadians who are making choices about their own bodies and their own capacities. We'll endeavour to listen to all stakeholders to craft a carefully balanced bill. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Surrey Newton.
Mr. Speaker, the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated how critical our digital communications capacity is. In a time where physical distance is the new norm, countries around the world are supporting people and businesses with digital governance. Can the Minister tell this House what best practices Canada has learned from other nations and what kind of collaborations Canada is leveraging with our partners?
Honourable Minister.
Well, I thank the member from Surrey Newton for his question and for his hard work for his constituents. Canada recently hosted the 7th Annual Digital Nations Summit, and that was a virtual gathering, and it was a gathering of international digital leaders. We discussed our responses to the pandemic and, in fact, our successes in using technology innovation to help serve people in that urgent time, this urgent time, actually. Mr. Speaker, I am working to accelerate this government transition to provide all Canadians with digital services that are secure and easy to use and reliable, and which they can use from any device they choose.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Abacus Data published a report this morning. They found that young people in Canada are among the hardest hit by COVID-19, and they must make fundamental shifts in their education, employment, and finances. Today, the Prime Minister reiterated the importance of young people taking this virus seriously. I find this particularly condescending, considering his government has held nearly $1 billion from students. It is stuck in the Liberal scandal limbo, and now students are left to struggle on their own. Is it the government's position that if their Liberal friends can't get this money, then no one will?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to be able to respond to the member's question, and I appreciate her advocacy on behalf of young Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Our government will continue representing and supporting young people because we know that the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted all Canadians, disproportionately certain segments, and young people, students are no exception. And that's exactly why we came out with a Canada Emergency Student Benefit. That's why we put a moratorium on Canada student loans. For young entrepreneurs, we increased funding to Futurepreneur. Canada Summer Jobs are still open so young people can obtain that Canadian work experience. We will continue working on behalf of young people, and I look forward to working with the honourable members so that we can deliver for all Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
Honourable Member for Fredericton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've had the honour of meeting with the presidents of 2 Royal Canadian Legions in my riding, and I've had countless conversations with veterans and advocates who brought critical issues to my attention. Right before Remembrance Day, we heard our government thank veterans for their bravery and their sacrifices. We honor them with poppies once a year, and we fail them the rest of the time. A staggering number of backlog cases and thousands of homeless veterans are ample evidence. Mr. Speaker, there is a distinct moral, social, legal, and fiduciary covenant between Canada and the active and retired members of the Canadian Armed Forces. Can the Minister of Veterans Affairs say if these obligations are upheld by this government? And following the welcomed announcement to support veterans organizations, does he also plan to increase the direct support to veterans and their families?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague for the question. As she is well aware, we fully intend to address the homeless issue with veterans, and there's a number of groups who we did support with C4 in order to make sure they had the appropriate funding. This is part of what helps to make sure we have organizations with boots on the ground that find the people, the veterans who are homeless and work. Perhaps they need the emergency fund or whatever. There's a number of avenues for them to use, but of course the organizations themselves have to have appropriate funding, and that's why we made sure they have the funding so we can deal with the veterans housing problem in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And that's all the time we have today. C'est tout le temps que nous avons aujourd'hui.
That concludes today's question period.
Orders of the day.
Ordre du jour, ordre émanant du gouvernement, travaux des subsides.
Orders of the day. Government Orders, Business of Supply, resuming debate on Mr. Chong's motion on foreign policy and China.
For Scarborough-Gilwood has 6 minutes left in his debate. The honourable member.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think I left off on the Belt and Road Initiative, which is a policy that seeks to strangle independent nations and bend their resources and sovereignty to the will of Beijing. To say that the pattern is not happening here, Mr. Speaker, would be naive. The most obvious initiative is the supply of Huawei gear to the building of our 5G network. Security analysts have consistently raised the alarm that any Chinese company operating abroad, be it Huawei, China Telecom, Comnet, etc., owes its first and foremost loyalty to Beijing. The obvious security threat is the exchange of sensitive security information among our allies, be they